When it comes to modern FNAF, the sad fact of the matter is that Ruin's story needs to be understood in the context of itself, Security Breach, and the books. My last video went over the idea that the Pizzaplex is being controlled or possessed by some form of the puppet and some form of baby, and the evidence of that idea in Ruin. In this video, I'm going to go over a lot more. Currently, game theory seems to believe that Cassie is some form of Elizabeth Apton and that her father is William. I think they're wrong, but they're almost right. The Tiger Rock mimic is partially the puppet, but so is Cassie. Cassie is not Elizabeth, but she is Apton's daughter. So I'm aware that that collection of words sounds like completely contradictory nonsense, but just hear me out. My last video's main theory allowed for multiple different camps of the community to accept and use. Whatever you believe about Cassie, Gregory, the mimic, the puppet, or baby, you could use what I pointed out in my video to help out your own idea. But this video is going to be leaning hard into one specific direction, and you may or may not agree with that direction, and that's okay. I understand this theory has a controversial basis and conclusion. This is simply the path I felt had the most evidence and made the most sense. First things first, I want to start with game theory's current take on the identity of Cassie. They seem to believe Cassie is Elizabeth because her father is a Fazbear engineer, has clearly been around long enough to know the history of the company, and his favorite animatronic is Bonnie, a trait commonly associated with William. But almost everything one could use as proof for William being Cassie's father, you can also use to prove Henry is her father. Obviously, Henry would be a Fazbear engineer, he would know practically everything about Freddy's. Furthermore, Elizabeth has always been depicted in the games to famously have yellow hair and green eyes, like someone else we know. Meanwhile, young Charlie and Cassie look suspiciously similar. The only trait that can actually stand as being an only William thing is Cassie's dad liking Bonnie. I guess you could also say her liking carrot cake is evidence for her being William's daughter too. No one likes carrot cake unless they're the kid of a bunny-themed serial killer. All of these pieces of evidence seem to contradict each other, but they don't. Because it's not that Cassie is just Henry's daughter or just William's, she's both of their daughters. Or at least she was at some point. To explain what I mean by that, let's answer why I think Cassie is a rebuilt Charlie, and also why I think Gregory is a rebuilt Crying Child. A lot of the evidence lies in both the Forest Closet novels and in the poster room. In the books, we learn Charlie gets killed by William, and then Henry builds a robot version of her, which Afton later steals. In the games, we learn that after Charlie dies, her actual soul possesses the puppet. I want to mention how little I see people talk about the idea of Henry building a robot Charlie in the first place. Like, that's the whole point of the novels, but no one talks about what that implies about the games. Everyone just wrote it off. They shouldn't have. Others have already made great points about the connections between the Twisted Ones and Ruin, so I want to go over that here, but it is more evidence that Charlie and Cassie might be the same. Let's assume for now that in the canonical lore of FNAF, Charlie dies, and when she does, her soul went to the puppet, while Henry built a robotic clone of her. I think this robot Charlie ran on a mimic program. Henry fed this AI memories and information about Charlie, so that she's the person this bot is now programmed to mimic. William sees the technology and steals it. We can see he was already trying to build robot people. Perhaps he's experimenting with how to put the Crying Child back together. But Henry does it first. William had always been jealous of his co-worker's genius, and now he could use one of Henry's creations to create his own masterpiece. He creates Baby to capture kids for the studying of Remnant, and after taking Charlie Bot, he gives Baby the Mimic program, in the form of this little chip. This would tie in pretty well with the books and the games. As you know from both the novel version and the in-game version of Baby, she's very good at pretending. In Sister Location specifically, she acts like she and Elizabeth are not one and the same.
Isn't this why you came here? To be with her again?
She even mimics Elizabeth's voice.
Isn't this why you came here? To be with me again?
Baby is possessed, but unlike basically every other animatronic we had seen so far, she is clearly her own person separate from the soul that inhabits her, until Michael removes the mimic program. Next time we see her in Pizzeria Simulator, Baby's not the same as she was before. She no longer seems to want to pretend, and she now speaks like she is Elizabeth.
I will make you proud, Daddy.
Baby's AI was fed data about Elizabeth, so she became programmed to mimic her, until the mimic program was thrown out of her equation, and she became Elizabeth in this animatronic body. Well, what does that mean for CharlieBot and the mimic chip Mike removed from Baby? For one thing, I think Fazbear Entertainment scanned the handy-unit circuit board, which we know Mike puts the mimic chip into help want it, and the program learned from the game and the stories and became Glitch Trap. And I think Baby isn't the only bot William made that uses the mimic program. I also think he made GGY, a little bot that looks exactly like the boy he promised he would rebuild. I think by the time Security Breach, where Afton is already in purgatory and cut off from the current story, where Vanny, Glitch Trap, and the Mimic animatronic that was puppeting Burn Trap have taken his place, GGY, or Dr. Rabbit, is doing whatever it is he was up to in the GGY book before Security Breach, making hideouts all over the Pizzaplex. Well then, what happened to CharlieBot? I think Afton fed both her and GGY data that made them believe they were the children of Afton. GGY is fed data about the grandchild, and so remembers stuff like his birthday party. CharlieBot is fed data about being Afton's daughter, which ends up conflicting with the data she already has about being Henry's daughter. That's why Cassie says stuff about her dad that could be attributed to both Henry and William, then makes a comment that can only be attributed to William, being her father, but also has so much evidence that she's Charlie and not Elizabeth. Side note, I find it really interesting how Cassie seems to want to help and save all the animatronics while Gregory seems perfectly comfortable and even eager to destroy them. Cassie seems to consider the animatronics as her friends, and Gregory seems to dislike them, all except Freddy, the one animatronic that the crying child always kept with him. I do have another bit of evidence to prove that Charlie was a part of William's family at some point, and this one actually comes from what I think is an extremely important detail that I have not seen anyone cover in any major theories, and that's this image. This is the room from FNAF 4. Same sheets, same hospital bed, same dresser and lamp. This girl with dark hair and brown eyes with at least one hair bun who wears a shirt similar to Cassie's along with a similar hair accessory with a slash going straight through her should not be here, unless she is Cassie. She may not be an exact copy, but the resemblance is there. Let's not forget that Cassie used to look very, very different with seemingly blonde hair and a totally different design. The idea of a girl that looks like Charlie, with a slash going through her, staying in the Afton household is not a detail that I think should be hand-waved away. I've seen some people call this girl the Vengeful Spirit / Cassidy from MCI, but it's almost definitely Charlie. You can find the Nightmare Young flesh behind this door. Anyway, at some point GGY stops being under the control of the Glitch Trap virus and forgets everything. Mostly. And he probably ends up staying in one of these hideouts in the Pizzaplex. Here we have another gap in the timeline. I do think CharlieBot was with the Aftons for a while, and this parallel to the books might even be the answer to the sister location show. But she ends up obviously separate from them. I even think she loses a good part of her memory, at some point calling herself Cassie. Alternatively, William may have changed her name from Charlie to Cassie. I even think the FNAF movie will shed some light on this area, and I think I know why she ends up losing her memory, maybe Gregory too, but we'll get to that later. Back to Cassie and her father. She talks about her dad like he's still around, but she acts like she isn't. If she got a distress call from Gregory in the Pizzaplex, why doesn't she tell her Fazbear engineer dad? Why does she not even mention him when she says to Gregory that she wants to find help outside the Pizzaplex? Not even a tertiary, I want to go home, or a, I want to see my dad. I don't know what exactly is going on with Cassie's head, but it seems pretty clear to me that she thinks her dad is around, but he doesn't seem to be. Almost like her two sets of data are conflicting. Her birthday party might be another example of this. Roxy says she invited her friends, but none of them showed up. Is that because she has friends that don't actually care about her, or because the friends she thinks she has aren't even around anymore? If all this is true, it leads to the question, what even happened to Cassie in between being adopted by the Aftons and Security Breach? We can't know for sure, but I have a hunch that whatever happened to her ended up making her partially lose her memory had to do with the fact that she might have gone possessed by Charlie's soul. We've seen Charlie force herself to stay in the mortal world even when she should be passing on because Afton was still around. It's even possible that she and the Vengeful Spirit were keeping Afton and UCN together. We don't even know for sure that the puppet burned at all. Lefty is suspiciously not shown during these cuts of the animatronics catching on fire. So saying that Charlie's soul 100% passed away is not a really solid argument, even if it ends up being true. Furthermore, if Cassie is possessed, it could explain why what she says about her life and her actions in the context of her life don't line up. The books do say that the dead forget a lot. This same phenomenon also might be why Gregory seems to know Vanessa and that he doesn't want to get caught by her, but also has no memory of GGY. So, for this theory, we're going to go with the idea that Gregory is a robot running a mimic program specifically designed to copy the crying child, who might be possessed by him, and that Cassie is a robot running a mimic program specifically designed to copy Charlie, who might be possessed by her. To bring up an elephant in the room, we need to talk about the post-it note room now. There is evidence to suggest that both some version of the crying child and some version of Charlie are writing these stickies, and ID's Fantasy made a great video about that, going over all the details, so I'll link that in the description instead of going over it myself. But while it's certainly possible that both these kids live in this room, I also think it's possible that only Charlie lived here. The door is called Charlie Door, and these staff bot heads are pretty direct. The main piece of evidence that the CC was in here is the Afton family table. But what always bothered me about the table is, why would the crying child feel the need to put a staff bot here to represent him if he was already at the table? If we go along with the theory that Charlie bot stayed with the Athens for a while, then her making this table fixes that issue. There's no staff bot to represent her at the table because she's already sitting there. Another big point of evidence that the crying child was here is the Sticky or Freddy, which would have been the last thing he saw. I want to point out that the puppet has seen Freddy this close up before as well, here, after giving gifts and giving life to the dead children. From what I can gather from environmental storytelling is that after Cassie and Gregory went their separate ways from the Ashton family, then partially lost their memories and maybe got possessed, they meet again at Cassie's party. Whereas Gregory has been hiding out in the Pizzaplex, Cassie seems to only be a visitor. We know that she used to hang out in the daycare, and if she is possessed, she must have come to this location before Ruin for Charlie's soul to be in proximity with her. Again, probably the poster room. Either way, I think she only meets Gregory here, who sees her sobbing after no one shows up to her party. Two quick notes here. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that Happiest Day isn't canon. None of the spirits were released from the suits, so no one showed up to Charlie's party. People always call this the Bite Victim's birthday party, but if that's true, why is Charlie the one always serving cake to everybody? It's not everyone's party, it's her party. Also, this image of Cassie with black tears streaking down her face reminds me of a certain someone. Anyway, she and Gregory become friends, not remembering their shared past, but only feeling their shared connection. Some time passes, security breach happens, and then Ruin. If you subscribe to Game Theory's recent theory that the Pizzaplex is under control of some version of Baby and some version of the puppet like I do, then you might think it contradicts my theory, but it doesn't. First off, when it comes to evidence of Baby being around, these giggling, vanishing plush babies are as direct as FNAF gets. Secondly, the main reason I think Cassie is not only an AI mimicking Charlie, but also a robot possessed by her is Nightmare-ion. I think the reason the Pizzaplex is a bunch of Nightmare-ion plushies around it, but basically no puppet plushies, is that the force opposing Baby is only a program meant to mimic the puppet. It's not Charlie. This character is like her, but it's not exactly the same. Nightmare-ion being a representation of the mimic makes even more sense when you hear it speak. Like it says, the digital cutting of its voice even sounds like the mimic animatronic to me. The reason we see Nightmare-ion Sapbot heads in the poster in our room is because Charlie Bot / Cassie hadn't been possessed by Charlie just yet. By that point, she is also just an AI replicating Charlie. She later gets possessed by Charlie, and so it's just the Nightmare-ion AI controlling the Pizzaplex that can be identified with these heads now. Moving on, here's a bit more evidence of Cassie being Charlie in some way or another. It's no secret that Elizabeth and Charlie have always been parallels of each other. Both are daughters of the creators of Fazbear, both get killed near or in a Fazbear location, and both possess an animatronic. One of them is kind and giving and a force of good, the other is vindictive, violent, and a force of evil. Charlie just wants to save every child and give them their happiest day, and Elizabeth seems dead set on pleasing her child-killing dad. With this opposition in mind, take a look at what Cassie says about Baby, saying things like, "What's she doing here?" and "discontinued." These things are really out of character for Cassie. We've never seen her speak in such a spiteful way. Honestly, looking at everything she says about the collectibles is interesting, like how it reveals that she's sad Bonnie's gone, and that she's played Help Wanted and seen Nightmare-ion, and that she's been visiting the Pizzaplex for a really long time. As she says, she's been on a ride that wasn't even functioning before security breach. Let me go over a bit of evidence for the existence of the two AIs controlling the Pizzaplex in the games. These opposing forces, Baby and Nightmare-ion, duel for control, leaving plushies all over the building as their calling card. One side seems to be trying to stop Cassie, like trying to kill her with a random ATM, a random falling elevator, and a randomly turning on go-kart. And the other side seems to be trying to push her forward, like inexplicable arrow drawings and comics supposedly drawn by Gregory when it should be impossible for him to draw them. Roxy even somehow gets pinned under a forklift with no explanation, which I think has to be one of the forces trying to help Cassie get to the basement. We even have the arcade machines and security breach messages said couldn't be turned off, giving Cassie parts of the animatronics to repair them. That's never explained, even though we only see this with Chica and nothing comes of it. Monty's legs are in the game, and were probably meant to be given to the player too. Did you notice these Nightmare-ion heads in the golf arcade? So, more evidence that one of the AIs wants to stop Cassie and one wants to egg her on. I think Baby is the one showing Cassie where to go, and that Nightmare-ion is the one trying to stop her, specifically because sometime after almost being killed by a go-kart that suddenly turned on, we see Nightmare-ion staff bots driving around the track. Also, right before Cassie gets attacked by an ATM, we can see a Nightmare-ion plushie looking at her, facing the exact spot where the cart rolls towards her. These staff bots tallying the wall might be one of the AIs too. Where have we seen these tally marks before? Here, in the survival logbook next to the puppet. Where else? Here, in Baby's room. In the same area of Baby's room, we see this very weird room full of purple shoes. In the rest of the game, the bowling shoes are different colors, but in this room, they're all purple. The only thing I can think of to make sense of this is this puppet plush next to a shoe with bits of purple and security breach. This has always confused me. In order to beat DJ Music Man, you have to come into this room and see this plush, so it was clearly something the devs wanted us to see, but I didn't know what it was trying to tell us. All I can say is, this feels significant, and so does this. And also, Cassie's shoes are purple as well. For me, all of that is pretty conclusive evidence when looked at together. So to sum up, I think Henry built the Mimic animatronic and the Mimic program for Charlie. Then William killed her, and she possessed the puppet. As William is trying to figure out how to rebuild the crying child, Henry creates a robot version of Charlie that was made to mimic his daughter. William steals Charlie bot away and potentially renames her Cassie, feeding her conflicting data about being his daughter. Now the timeline gets funky around here, so don't take what I say from this point as a hard order of events, but more so a collection of things that happened. By this point, he's known as the puppet's possession and has so created the fun times to capture kids and study Remnant. He puts a mimic program into Baby in the form of this chip. She kills Elizabeth and becomes possessed. At this point, Baby and Elizabeth are not the same because Baby is running on a mimic program. He creates Gregory and gives the mimic AI and feeds it data about being the crying child. Michael removes the mimic program from Baby and puts it in Hand Unit. Now, Baby and Elizabeth are effectively the same. FNAF 6 happens. Cassie has probably left the Afton household at this point. William is sent to Purgatory and is off the lore table for now. The mimic program from Hand Unit is scanned into Help Wanted and becomes Glitch Trap, corrupting multiple beta testers, eventually making Vanessa its new helper. Gregory is also corrupted and does all his Dr. Rabbit shenanigans that he does in GGY, staying in the Pizzaplex. At this point, the Mimic animatronic has been shipped to the Pizzaplex and Vanny feeds it at the info, probably corrupting it with the Glitch Trap virus, that makes a home in William's corpse, becoming Burn Trap. Meanwhile, the Pizzaplex's heart and soul, Tiger Rock, or whatever it ends up being in the games, is made up of two opposing sides. An AI that's mimicking Charlie but isn't exactly her, and who could either be the soul of Elizabeth or the actual baby AI meant to mimic her. The Nightmare AI seems to be trying to not allow Cassie back towards the Mimic, and the baby seems to be trying to get Cassie towards the basement to the Mimic. Back to the past, Cassie holds up in the post-it note room and possibly gets possessed by Charlie's soul here. Cassie comes to the Pizzaplex again, having her birthday party, but no one shows up. She meets Gregory and they become friends. By now, Gregory isn't under the control of Glitch Trap and might be possessed by a crying child. Then, Security Breach and Ruin play out. This theory does have holes, but I think it makes a lot of sense in terms of both lore and storytelling, and more importantly, even if I end up wrong, I think a lot of the stuff I pointed out will become important for the lore in the future. Before I end the video, I want to mention two theories I've seen going around. A lot of people believe Cassie's father is Michael, and I see the merit in it. It wouldn't even debunk my theory that much. Michael could have just as easily adopted Cassie into his care during a search for William in the games. In fact, that might literally be what happens, and that's what fills the gap in Cassie's story that I mentioned earlier. And I think the FNAF movie might prove that to be true. I have not had hopes for the movie in terms of revolutionary lore, but I would not be surprised if it confirms Cassie is Michael's adopted kid. The second theory I've seen is that Cassie, though bearing many similarities and references to Charlie, isn't her, but is instead a parallel of her. This theory doubles for Gregory's connection to the crying child, and triples for Edwin's connection to Henry. I don't want to discount this theory, but I do feel like you have to ignore a lot of the game's contents to subscribe to it. It's still possible though. Like, if Cassie is just a regular girl, maybe her technician father is one of these dweebs that gets killed in Sister Location. That could explain how she knows what fast wrenches are, as we see them in Help Wanted 2's rendition of Sister Location. It could explain why she seems to dislike Baby. Her father was killed in Baby's entertainment and rental. And it could explain why she talks about her dad like he's not around anymore. I don't subscribe to his theory, but it could work. That's it, this time. I didn't bring up everything in this video like Princess Quest or the endings or mixes, because I'm still formulating my thoughts on them. I'm curious to see where the community ends up landing when it comes to the whole story of Ruin. Thank you for watching. Please leave a like if you found the video interesting or informative, and leave a comment if you agree with my theory or want to point out something I'm missing or failed to mention. Bye.